There is a liquid that costs $3 at any hardware store that can deliver what a $5,000 paint respray promises. It doesn't sand, it doesn't buff, it doesn't require a spray booth or a trained technician. Instead, it bonds to oxidized clear coat at the molecular level, rebuilding damaged surfaces from the inside out. A retired chemist in Ohio once tested it on a 1986 Corvette that had spent 11 years abandoned in an open field. The hood had turned chalk white, brittle as dried cement. The fenders were peeling like sunburned skin, curling away in long, tired strips. With nothing more than a foam brush and 40 minutes of patience, he applied 3 coats in his driveway. 6 years later, the Corvette still gleamed as if it had just rolled off the production line in Bowling Green. The global auto body industry generates tens of billions each year, and the majority of that revenue comes not from collisions or structural repairs, but from cosmetic paint restoration. The economics are simple. Appearance sells, and restoration services depend on recurring demand. A $3 solution that eliminates the need for professional refinishing challenges an entire business model. When a product disrupts profit cycles instead of feeding them, it quietly fades from recommendations, not because it fails, but because it works too well to sustain repeat service revenue. This is the story of one of the cheapest liquids in automotive history, and the massive industrial machine that ensured it remained largely unknown. If you want more investigations like this where overlooked science meets real-world savings, make sure to subscribe now and turn on notifications. Because once you understand how these systems really work, you stop paying for problems you were never meant to have in the first place. At the beginning of the 20th century, a German chemist named Friedrich Ballner worked in a coatings laboratory near Stuttgart. His employer, a railway maintenance contractor for the Prussian state rail system, tasked him with developing industrial lacquers capable of surviving alpine winters, harsh ultraviolet exposure, and the relentless vibration of high-speed locomotives. During a series of experiments with thinned resin compounds, Ballner observed an unusual phenomenon. When certain acrylic formulations were diluted to near water consistency, they behaved unlike traditional coatings. Rather than forming a layer on top of damaged lacquer, the liquid penetrated microscopic fractures and hardened from within. He documented the process in meticulous detail, naming it capillary resin infiltration. The principle was elegantly simple yet scientifically robust. As ultraviolet radiation degrades lacquer over time, it breaks polymer chains at the surface, creating a network of microchannels. These channels function like capillaries in biological tissue, drawing in sufficiently thin liquids through surface tension. When that liquid contains cross-linking resins, it cures within those microscopic pathways, restoring cohesion to the compromised coating. Instead of masking deterioration, it reverses it at the structural level. Ballner's discovery demonstrated that restoration did not always require removal or replacement. Sometimes renewal could occur invisibly, guided by the physics of flow and the chemistry of molecular bonding. The railway company wasted no time putting the discovery to the test. Their first experiment took place on a Class P8 locomotive that had endured 9 unforgiving winters along exposed alpine routes. The once vivid Prussian red lacquer covering the engine cowling had faded into a dull, chalky orange, its surface fractured with a web of microscopic cracks visible under magnification. Mechanics applied the thinned acrylic resin by hand using simple cotton rags. After only 2 applications, the transformation was undeniable. Depth returned to the color, gloss resurfaced across the steel panels, and the locomotive regained an appearance that closely resembled its original factory finish. The restoration was carefully documented in a series of photographs that still exist today in the Deutsche Bahn Historical Archives in Nuremberg. Yet this moment marked the beginning of a divergence that would shape the future of coatings technology in unexpected ways. Friedrich Ballner's work had not been commissioned by automobile manufacturers. It belonged to the railway industry, whose economic priorities were fundamentally different. Rail systems operated under constant pressure to reduce operational downtime and control maintenance costs. Repainting entire locomotives was not merely expensive, it was disruptive. Restoration, by contrast, extended the life of existing coatings with minimal interruption. Across Europe, capillary resin infiltration was adopted enthusiastically as a practical solution to an industrial problem. Meanwhile, the automotive revolution that surged across America in the 1920s followed a very different path. Henry Ford's famous declaration that customers could choose any color as long as it was black was not simply a matter of aesthetic preference. The black finish used on early mass-produced vehicles was a nitrocellulose lacquer designed for rapid drying and efficient assembly line production. It created a sleek, uniform appearance as cars rolled off factory floors, but its long-term durability under sunlight was never its primary purpose. Within 3 to 5 years of outdoor exposure, predictable degradation set in. To the emerging automotive industry, this was not a flaw to be eliminated, it was a cycle that sustained an expanding service economy. A finish that deteriorated reliably ensured a continuous demand for professional repainting. Professional refinishing soon became a cornerstone of automotive revenue streams. By the early 1950s, the American auto body sector had established a standardized workflow that has remained remarkably consistent for decades. The process begins with sanding existing paint down to bare metal using progressively finer abrasives. Exposed surfaces are then treated with corrosion-resistant primer within ventilated spray booths. Multiple coats of base color are applied in climate-controlled environments, followed by layers of clear urethane sealant that must cure under carefully regulated conditions. Depending on the vehicle's size and the severity of damage, this procedure can demand anywhere from 8 to 40 labor hours. In modern markets, the cost of a full exterior respray typically ranges between $1,500 and $5,000, while luxury vehicles finished with complex metallic or pearl coatings can exceed $8,000 at dealership service centers. Yet the principle Ballner observed in his Stuttgart laboratory more than a century ago remains fully applicable to contemporary automotive clear coats. Advances in polymer chemistry have not invalidated his discovery. They have only made the necessary compounds more affordable and accessible. The restoration process relies on a blend of acrylic copolymer resins suspended within a volatile solvent carrier. When applied to oxidized paint, the solvent temporarily opens microscopic pores within the degraded clear coat layer. Resin molecules are drawn into these channels through capillary action and surface tension, precisely as Ballner described. Over the following 12 to 48 hours, as the solvent evaporates, the resin cross-links with itself and with the remaining polymer structure of the original coating. Unlike waxes that sit superficially on the surface or silicone polishes that offer only temporary cosmetic filling, this material becomes integrated into the clear coat itself. It forms a durable molecular bond that restores structural integrity rather than merely masking deterioration. The outcome is a rejuvenated finish chemically fused to the pigment layer beneath, a process that constitutes genuine polymer-level restoration. Remarkably, every component required to perform this transformation can be obtained at a hardware store for less than the price of a simple household tool, underscoring the enduring relevance of a discovery first recorded in 1903. Stay with me, because the real story begins where the money trail intersects with silence. What the auto body industry did to keep this knowledge out of public reach reveals far more than a simple technical oversight. This video only scratches the surface. Over the years, information buried by the automotive sector, the coatings industry, and even segments of the outdoor gear market has been collected and consolidated into one place. The deeper you look, the more you begin to understand how entire profit structures can depend on what people never learn. Within the complete Forbidden Outdoors archive lies a collection of practical systems designed to bypass expensive commercial solutions. There is a step-by-step guide to constructing a biosand filtration unit capable of purifying contaminated river water for under $10 using materials available at most hardware stores. Techniques for generating high-efficiency fire, once standard in military field manuals, have been labeled hazardous by parts of the camping equipment industry, conveniently aligning with the growth of portable stove sales worth millions each year. You will also encounter the earth battery design, a simple configuration that produces usable electricity through soil conductivity, scrap copper wiring, and galvanized nails. Emergency shelter concepts are included as well, many of which outperform $300 commercial tents during independent field tests conducted in mountainous environments. The archive extends into complete rainwater harvesting systems that can eliminate residential water bills through gravity-fed collection and storage alone. There is a comprehensive off-grid solar setup guide, along with wood gas generator plans once used to power civilian vehicles across occupied Europe during the Second World War, technologies that remain functional on modern engines today. At the center of the collection sits the full paint restoration protocol referenced in this video, detailing precise product types, mixing ratios, application techniques, and sourcing pathways. More than a dozen guides are combined into a single repository focused entirely on practical knowledge, stripped of marketing language or filler content. Beyond the historical narrative, the science behind the so-called $3 solution carries its own weight. A landmark study published in the Journal of Coatings Technology in 2003 examined the penetration behavior of acrylic resin on artificially weathered automotive panels. Researchers at the University of Southern Mississippi subjected 20 identical steel panels, each coated with standard automotive clear coat, to concentrated ultraviolet radiation calibrated to simulate approximately 8 years of Gulf Coast sun exposure. The result was uniform stage 3 oxidation across every sample, characterized by a chalk-white appearance and widespread microfracturing of the coating surface. The experiment divided the panels into 2 groups. 10 received a single application of diluted acrylic copolymer resin applied with a standard foam pad, while the remaining 10 were treated using a leading commercial rubbing compound widely available in automotive retail stores. After 72 hours of curing, gloss measurements revealed a dramatic difference. Resin-treated panels recovered an average of 87% of their original factory reflectance, whereas panels corrected with abrasive compound regained only 34% under identical conditions. Within 6 months, the abrasive-treated surfaces had reverted to full oxidation, effectively erasing any cosmetic improvement. The resin-restored panels, however, maintained their finish throughout the 36-month duration of the study, with no measurable decline. Researchers concluded that capillary resin infiltration represented a fundamentally more effective restoration pathway than any abrasive correction method tested. The study underwent peer review, was cited in subsequent coatings research, and yet received little to no recognition within major North American auto body service networks. This absence of adoption speaks less to scientific validity than to the economic realities shaping industry practices. Knowledge that reduces dependency on recurring services challenges established revenue models. By understanding the chemistry of automotive coatings at even a basic level, vehicle owners shift from passive consumers to informed decision makers, and that transformation is precisely what long-standing service ecosystems are least equipped to accommodate. Subscribe and share this with every car owner you know who has been quoted thousands of dollars for cosmetic paintwork they could easily handle in their own driveway. Everything the industry has quietly buried is gathered inside the complete Forbidden Outdoors archive. Stay with me, because the controversy surrounding this $3 liquid is even more revealing than the restoration technique itself. In 2009, a separate investigation conducted at the Fraunhofer Institute for Manufacturing Technology in Germany confirmed similar outcomes on a far larger and more practical scale. Instead of controlled laboratory samples, German researchers worked with an operational fleet of commercial delivery trucks and service vans. These were vehicles with 5 to 12 years of continuous outdoor exposure, subjected to freezing rain, ice-laden winters, and relentless ultraviolet radiation that baked sheet metal panels throughout northern European summers. Every vehicle displayed severe oxidation, and several had deteriorated to the point where the gray primer beneath the paint had become visible. The Fraunhofer team applied 2 coats of diluted acrylic copolymer resin across each exterior panel using standard foam rollers. The results echoed what Friedrich Ballner first documented more than a century earlier in Stuttgart. The resin penetrated degraded clear coat layers through capillary action, bonding permanently with the pigment beneath without any sanding or mechanical abrasion. Across the fleet, average gloss recovery reached 81%, and remarkably, no reapplication was required after 3 additional years of outdoor exposure. Researchers calculated the material cost at approximately €2 per square meter of painted surface. Considering that a typical sedan has roughly 8 square meters of exterior paint, the total restoration expense amounted to about €16, less than $20. By comparison, the minimum cost for professional refinishing at a body shop in the same country begins around $1,500 for a comparable cosmetic result. This gap is not simply unfavorable for the industry, it challenges the viability of its entire economic structure. So why does this knowledge remain obscure? Why do mechanics, body shops, and dealership service advisors continue recommending full resprays when oxidation appears? The answer lies within the revenue architecture of large franchise-based refinishing networks. Companies such as Mako operate hundreds of locations, processing vast volumes of vehicles each year. Entry-level paint packages may start around $500, while premium options commonly range between $1,500 and $3,000, depending on vehicle size and finish complexity. In 2023 alone, the collision repair and refinishing sector in North America generated approximately $48.6 billion in revenue, a figure that has steadily increased over the past decade. Analysts estimate that between 25 and 35% of this income originates from purely cosmetic refinishing work, addressing oxidation, fading, and minor surface imperfections rather than structural damage. This translates into an estimated $12 to $17 billion annually spent on conditions that could potentially be mitigated with low-cost resin-based restoration methods. From an economic standpoint, the reluctance to promote such solutions becomes easier to understand. A treatment that reduces or eliminates repeat service visits directly undermines the long-term profitability of franchise operations built on cyclical demand. You cannot patent a diluted acrylic resin formula whose foundational chemistry has existed in the public domain for decades. You cannot establish sustainable recurring revenue on a process that customers perform once for lasting results. And you cannot maintain an extensive network of service locations if consumers no longer perceive professional intervention as essential for cosmetic paint correction. The prevailing business model relies on automotive finishes being viewed as temporary and vulnerable. It depends on oxidation returning predictably and on the assumption that restoration requires specialized tools, controlled environments, and trained technicians. A simple, low-cost liquid applied at home challenges every element of that narrative, shifting control from industry systems back to individual vehicle owners. For that reason, the method did not vanish through regulation or public prohibition. It faded through something far more subtle and far more effective institutional silence. In many industries, the most profitable narratives are not the ones loudly defended, but the ones quietly left unchallenged. When a solution disrupts established revenue patterns, it does not need to be banned. It only needs to be ignored long enough for collective memory to forget it ever existed. Most products marketed today as paint restorers or oxidation removers rely on a fundamentally different principle. They are typically composed of petroleum distillates blended with mild abrasives and silicone-based fillers. Their function is mechanical rather than structural. A thin layer of degraded clear coat is ground away, and surface imperfections are temporarily masked by silicone polymers that sit on top of the paint. Under bright showroom lighting, the immediate transformation can appear dramatic. Yet exposure to sunlight, rain, and environmental contaminants quickly erodes this superficial finish. Within weeks, oxidation returns, reinforcing the belief that true restoration requires professional intervention. This cycle of short-term improvement and recurring deterioration strengthens reliance on high-cost refinishing services. Understanding the alternative begins with recognizing a simple scientific reality. Oxidized paint is rarely destroyed at a structural level. It is fractured. Ultraviolet radiation breaks polymer chains at the surface of the clear coat, creating a network of microscopic channels. These pathways can be refilled and stabilized using the correct resin chemistry, restoring cohesion rather than merely disguising damage. Practical application starts with proper surface preparation. The vehicle must be thoroughly washed using a detergent capable of removing residual waxes, silicones, and contaminants. Complete drying is essential to ensure optimal bonding conditions. A controlled amount of acrylic copolymer resin can then be applied with a clean foam applicator, working in consistent, overlapping strokes across each panel. As the solvent carrier evaporates, resin molecules migrate into the damaged coating through capillary action. Following an initial curing phase, the surface can be gently buffed with a microfiber cloth to enhance clarity and restore gloss. Additional layers may be applied depending on the severity of oxidation, with full curing typically achieved within 48 hours. Numerous case reports from vehicle owners describe restored finishes, maintaining color depth and reflectivity for years under normal outdoor exposure. While outcomes can vary based on environmental factors and the extent of degradation, the underlying chemical mechanism aligns with established coatings, research, and long-documented material science principles. The lesson extends beyond automotive paint. Industrial practices and consumer expectations are often shaped as much by economic incentives as by technical limitations. Knowledge that reduces dependency on recurring services can be marginalized when it conflicts with entrenched business models. Revisiting overlooked research, historical documentation, and empirical testing allows individuals to understand how materials truly behave rather than how markets frame their behavior. Being informed does not eliminate the value of professional expertise in cases of severe structural damage or complete coating failure. It does, however, broaden the spectrum of available solutions for addressing cosmetic deterioration. Access to accurate information empowers consumers to evaluate maintenance strategies based on evidence, cost efficiency, and long-term performance instead of tradition or assumption. If this perspective helped you see automotive care in a new light, share it with someone who has been told that restoration is impossible without spending thousands. Subscribe for deeper investigations into overlooked science and practical solutions, and explore the full archive linked below to uncover knowledge industries would rather remain forgotten.